Hi, this is Krista Lay.
And I'm Craig Aarons Martin.
We're the co-hosts of the SEL in EDU podcast.
Proud member of the Education Podcast Network.
Each show on the network is independently owned, and the views expressed may not represent those of other podcasts.
For the best education podcast, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello and welcome to Black, Brown, and Bilingue, where our mission is to unite the Black and Brown communities through education, storytelling, and community engagement.
The vision of Black, Brown, and Bilingue is to be part of creating a world in which Black and Brown identities are affirmed, bilingualism and biculturalism are nurtured, and equity is the driving force behind all that we do. Thank you for joining us again today. I am Lisette Jacobson, and I am one of your hosts.
And I'm Maurice McDavid. I'm your other host.
We are so excited to have Djuana Okotete. She is an inspiring educator turned author working to close the reading gap and promote literacy in our youth. She started her professional career as an educator, where she positively impacted the lives of students, parents, and co-educators. During her 10 years of teaching in inner city schools, she created an exciting yet challenging environment that encouraged growth and exploration. Djuana transitioned to Chick-fil-A, where she served as a talent and marketing director, using her educational background to develop training programs that managed and retained talent. In addition, Djuana is the CEO of Do Read, where she publishes meaningful children's literature and provides resources for teachers. She continues to inspire and educate young minds every day. As someone who advocates for anything to help close the reading gap in marginalized communities, Djuana writes and illustrates children's books reflecting her African-American cultural experience. Welcome, Djuana. We are so excited to have you. Before we jump into the questions, though, we got to tell the listeners, you and I went to college together.
Whoop, whoop, Broncos. I mean, wait, that's high school. College, Huskies.
Husky Nation.
Look, I'm still in my high school brain because
Yeah, well, you went
I
to
just did the
Kenwood,
lunch.
right?
Yeah, I went to Kenwood and I did the lunch for No Pink Please at Kenwood. So I'm like, Broncos.
Yeah.
But definitely Husky land.
Husky land. And, I think we had, I remember a geology class together.
Yes,
For
we
sure.
definitely had a class together.
And then here's where it's even more interesting. My husband, Brett, was your CA, or for people who don't know what that is, your RA.
Yes, a lot of people call them RAs, but yes, girl, he was my CA, and I know I got on his nerve.
Was he ever there? Because I'm sure I monopolized his time.
Not really, but I used to be messing with him, and then I became a CA, and I think he was like over like something, and I was trying to get funding through him. I'm like, I need your help.
Yeah, that is hilarious. So it is so nice to have you, and we come full circle. And Maurice is actually from DeKalb, so it's all of these connections. Yes.
Which is why I did not go there for undergrad. Otherwise, we would have been there together. But I'm from DeKalb. I had to bounce for a little bit and then come back, so.
That's cool, though. So you probably know a lot of people I probably know that still is in that area right now.
I was about to say, and then you said Kenwood, so I know a couple of folk. I went down to Knox, had a couple of folk from Kenwood, Jason Macklin, Lamar. Yeah. So anyways, but it's a small world, right? When it all starts, getting together. So we're excited to have you on today, and it's nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you prior to the show. So.
I'm excited to be here.
All right, Maurice, why don't you go ahead and start with the first question?
Absolutely. So, Djuana, you taught for 10 years in inner city schools. And I got to just share with you real quick, right? Like, because we're all ed majors, right? So when I became an ed major, like my intention was I'm going to go to the city and I'm going to teach, in the city. I'm going to be the superhero teacher. They're going to make a movie about me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, but then somebody was like, "Yeah, but Maurice, you were born and raised in DeKalb, brother," and I was reminded that I don't know anything about the city. So you mentioned you went to Kenwood, so you had that experience of having come through CPS. But what was one of the biggest things you learned as an educator, kind of in your 10 years there working in the city?
For sure. So the one thing that I like to tell people, especially new educators, is there is no textbook, not one, that can teach you how to be a teacher or teach you even how to be an educator, because you educate on so many different levels, right? There are things that I feel like over my 10 years of being an educator that I've learned that you just have to have. You have to have drive. You just have to, some type of perseverance, grit. You have to have grit. You have to have grace, because every day you're going to have to give kids grace and adults grace every day. And then you have to know how to build a community. So those are my four things that I feel like I've learned within the 10 years of teaching within inner city schools. Because there are going to be so many hiccups, so many things that surface, that you have to be able to, again, have that drive, grit, some type of grace for people, and then you need to know how to build community.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question, Lisette, before we jump
Yes.
on? Because I heard a comedian say this once, Djuana, that nobody ever talks about outer city schools, right? And so we kind of have this phraseology around inner city
Inner city
schools.
schools, yeah.
What has that meant to you? If there's somebody looking to, go quote unquote to the inner city, do you think that like is there something even about that phraseology, something that folk need to really consider or think about if they're going to make that move?
So basically, for me, when I think of inner city schools, because I've also had some experience in outer city schools, but specifically inner city schools, when you think of that word, you should definitely be thinking about coming in with non-traditional ideas on how to help kids grow and learn, because these are kids who have experienced things that people in other situations have never experienced. I've had teachers, co-teachers, who had come into inner city schools to teach, and they had never experienced any of the things that the kids were going through, so they had no empathy, or they couldn't empathize, or they couldn't, show up in a way where the kids, I felt like, needed them, because of their inability to understand, oh, this is a whole different culture. And
Yes.
sometimes people don't understand, living in a city, regardless of what city it is, there's a different beat to their movement. There's a different hum, like, and you have to learn how to adjust to that, or you'll fail.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, I through the Golden Apple Scholar Foundation, I actually had one of my summer teaching experiences was at Kenwood.
What?
And
That was way
yes,
back when
it's
Kirby probably was the principal.
probably it was way back. And I remember I was in a junior and senior like lit class. And even then, no shade to the teacher. I mean, she probably doesn't even remember me, but no shade to the teacher. I don't think that she was necessarily prepared for that environment. And I remember like having conversations with her, and it was like she would always say like, "Oh, I didn't prepare. I did all this other stuff." And I get it. It was summer school, but I feel like with the group of kids she had in there, they kept you on your toes. They needed a brisk pace. You couldn't just be taking your time like
And
delivering
we're talking
instruction.
about Kenwood. We're talking about one of the top schools in the city,
Right,
right?
right.
Just think about if it was a school like, okay, so I'm from Inglewood, I'm from 70th and Damon, right? And our community school was Harper. Let's talk about Harper. There are other kids who are not even receiving the little bit of attention or the little bit of resources that Kenwood has, as small as they might be, versus this school that's on the other side of the town. So yeah, you're right. She wasn't probably prepared because she just read her good textbook and got straight A's.
Yep. That's exactly it. And so it was very interesting for me. I remember thinking like, people can say, you know, this is what my heart wants me to do, but you really have to be prepared. And like you said, that community piece, I kind of want to expand a little bit on that, because it does take a village, and Maurice and I definitely adhere to that philosophy. What do you remember doing to kind of help build some of that community?
Man, so Lisette, I'm glad you asked that question because this is one of the things that I feel like I do very well. Building community for me is creating safe spaces for kids, even the kids who people have deemed whatever phrase you want to put between my air quotes, you know, they call them all types of things, you know, and, you know, with these labels, sometimes kids come in already defeated. And so from day one is always my goal to make every student that enters my class feel loved, appreciated, a part of something. And from there, I take it even further and make the students appreciate each other. And that part is kind of hard, but I tell them like this: we're just like any other family. We're going to fight. We're going to be upset with each other. There's going to be consequences. There's going to be, you know, celebrations, happy moments, but at the end of the day, we're all one classroom. So this is our family. This is all we have here, right? And so if you can get kids to really buy into that, and they usually did for me, it will just expand like the amount of like love that they actually had underneath all of the hardcoreness that they had to, you know, supplement or actually cover themselves in to survive. You know, allow them to be soft, allow them to have those moments, to not have to be in a place where they have to defend themselves. And I feel like that was, and then I had stuff like classroom get together areas or whatever. I don't even remember what I called them, but I'm sure it had some cute little name where there was deodorant, there were clean uniforms, there was breakfast food if they came in late. Like, it's not their fault. They're kids, right? Those are issues we have to address with the adults. And when you are able to, you know, address those issues head on, they start feeling like, oh, this person cares about me. Maybe she for real. Maybe we are a community. Maybe I do got to look out for this one student. Maybe, you know, I should stop bullying. And then it works.
Love that. I love that. That's inspiring.
Oh, thanks.
Definitely. So you have you did the 10 years in the classroom, and now you've transitioned to being an author and working in the corporate world. So now you talked about building all of
this. Let me just tell you, the corporate world wasn't for me either.
Okay.
So no more Chick-fil-A.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
But we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, maybe that's the question then, right? Is because you touched my heart talking about this education world, and then I know the corporate world doesn't always work in the same way. So
I wasn't ready, y'all.
You know.
For sure. So I know you guys was wondering, like, was it a culture shock? Absolutely. I was in there like, y'all don't care about each other. What is happening? You know, so it was definitely a culture shock. Some of the differences that I noticed in corporate America versus the education world was you're not allowed to care as much. Like, you have a deadline, that deadline needs to be met. And that's basically it. You got to get your task at hand done. And, you know, my husband's worked in corporate America since he's been out of college. And I never thought of it like that. Like, I just used to be like, y'all don't talk beyond your meetings and stuff like that. And he's like, no. But that's literally, you know, you go to work, you do what you have to do, you leave. I do think it was a little bit different for me because I was with Chick-fil-A, and, you know, Chick-fil-A is the most caring company in the world. That's their mission. So they were very nice all the time. Like, every person I worked with, every person I came in contact with was always just genuinely good people. And I appreciated that soft transition into corporate America, but it still wasn't for me. The similarities that I noticed about it is everything in our world is based off a number. You know, and education is just based off of either student ID, or sometimes we can get it even granular and say based off kids' IEPs or 504 plans, but everything's determined by a number and what people want you to do with this number. And I think that was one of the things that kind of like pushed me even further away from Chick-fil-A and the traditional education system, because I was just like, I don't like either one of these things. I want to create my own thing. And that's how Do Read was birthed.
Mm. You know, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I mean, it's still the same. Data is the biggest marker for success, not necessarily the community that you build or the amount of lives that you've been able to make a positive impact on. It still comes down to, like that accountability, even at the state level, where now we're publishing data about every school for everyone to research, and then that impacts like where people want to buy a home. And so, I feel like the three of us are very relational people, and so it's hard to merge the two. Like it has been, I think, something that is very challenging for Maurice and I to do. So you then transition, or did you write the book? Did you decide I'm going to become an author while you were in corporate? Or how did that come about? And also, like, if you could talk about what drove your decision to leave teaching.
For sure. So I wrote, so I have 7 books written already.
Wow.
And I wrote the
Congrats.
book. Thank you. I was writing. I've always been a writer. Like I've always loved literature. I end up getting my bachelor's in English instead of education, even though we were in education classes together. And then went back and got my master's in education. So I love literature. I always have. I've always been that kid that can fall in love or jump into a story and become a part of the story, and I feel like, oh, I started writing my books back when I was my first teaching position in St. Louis, Missouri. I was working for St. Louis Public Schools, and that was just my creative outlet, and then I paused on those. Me and my husband moved to Ohio. My brother-in-law had leukemia. We were going to go help be caregivers with his wife and at the time. And when I got there, he was like, "You got to do this." And he was like, "These are great." And he was also an author. And so with that resurfacing, I was hyped about it again, and he passed away. And so I kept feeling that urge, like, this is your thing. This is what you need to be doing. And so I just jumped into it. Once he passed away, I felt like that was my push. And he definitely motivated me to like jump into it and actually take it head on. But as far as leaving education, I was burnt out, girl. Burnt out. Like, y'all know. And
Talk
it was,
about
let's talk about the burnout. So
it.
it wasn't even like the burnout from the kids. Like, I love the kids so genuinely. Like,
It
I was the
rarely ever is,
teacher.
Joanna. It's rarely the
It's
kids.
never the kids. And so, COVID had hit, and I just got so frustrated with how not only, the world was treating educators, but the districts were having all these very stupid, if I may say, demands. Society had all these demands, parents, other teachers. I was watching teachers who have been phenomenal educators fail for the first time in their career, like sometimes some of them 20-year careers, because of something as simple of not knowing how to use Zoom. Like it was heartbreaking to watch. And I was done. I said, first of all, educate without an educator, you can't have any other career in this world. You can't have a basketball player. He's not gonna make it to high school without a teacher. You're not gonna have any sports person, any person that wants to be a doctor, lawyer. You start off going through the educational system to become these affluent people, and we're the only professional career that I feel like has to have a hustle to survive. I was over it. And so I just let it go in that retrospect and started to like make strategic moves to make Do Read come alive.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. Sorry, Maurice, and then I'll stop.
Sure.
Because
For sure.
you know, do you feel, because I'll be honest, there have been moments where I've also considered throwing in the towel, moments, right? Like, goodness, especially when you see certain things and you're like, is this even for me? Do you like, how hard was it really though to make that decision? Because I feel like as educators, we wear that title as a badge of
Oh,
honor. It is your
yes.
whole identity. It consumes your life. And so letting go of that part of you, especially if
It
this is
was
your dream and you've
so
always wanted to be a teacher, can you talk a little bit about, like, did you have to lean on things? Like, what were some coping strategies? Like, just talk us through that process a little bit more.
for sure. So it was very hard. It was so hard because at the beginning of the year, the first year where everybody had to go virtual, I was like, it wasn't that part wasn't even hard. I killed virtual learning. I'm talking about attendance was good. I did porch gardens with my kids, dropped off stuff to them. We had movie days where I dropped popcorn. Like
Wow.
I made it work. And I actually had fun with it. But it was stuff like the curriculum wise, our district had just bought a new curriculum the previous year. Of course, they didn't know COVID was going to happen, but they tried to force us to use that curriculum. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm not, because y'all don't even pay me enough to pay my mortgage. And, it was stuff like that, but it was extremely hard, Lisette. I had to lean a lot onto God for sure. Like a lot of prayer, a lot of like, are you sure this is what you want me to do? Like, are you sure this is the right road for me? I had to lean a lot on my husband because outside of my husband and a couple of people didn't get it. They're like, what? You're the best teacher we know. What are you doing? Oh my God. My mom asked me like 50,000 times, so what are you going to do? Are you sure this is what you want to do? And then, after a while, people jumped on board, but it was just like that part was the hardest because I'm like, look, y'all going to have to either roll with it or go. Like, this is the decision that I've made, and I have valid reasons for why I made this decision. But I will not sit here and say that it was not hard. It was extremely hard because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I would like corporate America. I didn't. I didn't know if, do read whatever even jump off the surface. It did. So I stood the course, and again, that grit, that drive, that grace, all those same four things you needed in the classroom, I needed to have for myself. And it worked. It's
Love
working.
it.
Let's say that. It ain't worked just yet.
Right. I like that. Said it's on its way. I'm still in
Right.
the journey. Now listen, Djuana, you don't know this about me perhaps, but I'm also an assistant pastor, so I feel a preaching spirit coming about me now, because
Ooh,
when
let it
you
out.
talk about that need for faith, right? And again, I am personally a Christian. I've tried to make sure that this space on our podcast is not a place where I'm on here like regularly preaching, because
For
we're
sure.
trying to
Baby, if
build
I'm there,
community.
God gonna be there. So we there.
Exactly. So I can't show up without them. But what I will say is, in February of this year, I had been dealing with some different things. Felt like I needed to make a move. And sure enough, in February of this year, I was kind of backed into a corner. Hey, we either need you to sign this contract or not. And there are some things that go with it. And
people don't know
so
about those moments either. How
yeah,
they back
well,
up
right.
corners.
Yes. And so I called my wife. I said, hey, here's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm getting ready to sit down in front of this computer and write my letter of resignation. I called my pastor. I said, I had already written the letter. I'm driving over to the office. I said, Pastor, I'm getting ready to walk into HR and hand them my letter of resignation. I don't yet have a job, but I'm trusting that this is from the Lord, and I'm going to turn in this letter. So now I do have a job. I get school board approved on Tuesday. But people think that I quit over there in order to come take this. And they don't know that I quit over there to trust God enough to say that he would get me to where I'm supposed to be. So whether it's moving from one building to the other, one job to another, a position up, position down, whatever it is, or leaving the field of education altogether, if we can have those ears and trust, right, man, it's just key. It's key. And so I appreciate your story is inspiring. And I love, though, that you're still doing the important work of education, right? And I think that's a really important piece. So can you tell us a little bit about this book? Because we want to we're going to get your link. We're going to tweet it out. We're going to Facebook it out. We want people to come buy your book. I've appreciated it. So, I've written a children's book myself, just got done on Monday. I was down reading down in Clinton, Illinois, and then did my little rap song that goes along with it, and got some more stuff in the works. But we want to promote you. And you said you did a luncheon at Kenwood. Tell us what that journey has been like of having the book, getting the book out there.
For sure. Okay, so I want to start off by saying, like, my vision is to inspire a love for reading, learning, and community. That's my vision. My mission is that all of us, everybody, all do read, and we're committed to creating meaningful children's literature and supporting educators and with implementing exceptional learning experiences. So that's, showing up and being a consultant. Like, I got a couple of people I'm working with now who are finishing books as well, and just helping out in that area, and then also helping educators learn how to create those communities within their classrooms, learn how to show up for students beyond just the testing. And but as far as the story, the name is No Pink Please. I created this book, or dedicated this book, to my brother D'Angelo, who passed away from leukemia, because he was one of the first to believe in me, right? And he believed in me on such an infectious level that it was only fitting. So I initially called the book I Don't Like Pink, but I felt like that was a little boring. So I changed the name. And then when I started like rewriting things and just like editing and like going in, that's when my brother actually passed away. And I was grieving silently because he's actually my husband's brother. And I was trying to show up for him in a way, that I felt like he needed, along with my sister-in-law, his child, all of that. And when it was time for me to grieve, I feel like God directed me right back to those books, like, this is where I want you. And so I changed the plot to the story to include my brother-in-law, and made it come alive with illustrations. I illustrated on myself everything. And then God made the provision. I quit that 9 to 5, y'all. He said, I had a little hiccup, and he said, baby, this is not where I intended you to be anyway. And so I left, and it's been great ever since. So yeah, No Pink Please is out. It's on Amazon, all over my social media. And I look forward to all the great things that are coming in the future with Do Read in general. The second book is probably going to be launching sometime this fall. I know, 2 launches in 1 year. Yes, I'm just being obedient at this moment. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the book, and like what is the theme, or like what was the inspiration? Because obviously you don't like the color pink, and before we started the interview I was cracking up because I was like, oh snap, pink is my color. Like,
oh, that's the thing. I want people to love what they love. I know, it's so crazy because my cousin called me like, I'm coming to the party, but I can't wear pink. I love pink. I'm like, where would you want to? Did you read the book? She like, no, but I'm saying. So No Pink Please is a book about being confident in your choices, whether it's your favorite color or what you wear. You have the freedom to like what you like. And I want to make sure I portray that in the literature that I write, because sometimes I feel like our kids are so restricted, especially in public schools. They can't even decide what to wear. They have to wear a uniform. Now, one thing I did want to make sure I mention is the characters in my books are faceless intentionally. In honor of Miss Annie Lee of Chicago, she's a famous Black artist. That's one reason they're faceless. And then also I want all the kids that read my stories to envision themselves in it. And sometimes when you create a face, they can't see themselves. And one of the things in our communities especially is our kids don't have a lot of literature to relate to. And I want to make sure that I'm making that meaningful literature where they can relate and they can see themselves in the characters, no matter what color they are.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love it. It's beautiful. The illustrations. You're right. The title is much more captivating than, because you got like the way it's even written. It's like awesome because it's like no pink, please, but pink is crossed out. You know, I'm excited that you're talking about doing some additional projects because, you know, as I heard you talk, I'm sitting here thinking like, wait a minute, Maurice, like you're about to open a new school. You'll have a lot of autonomy in terms of who to bring in. I'm sensing a little bit of a partnership here that we can develop.
And I'm loving this.
Yeah, like I feel like we can definitely partner up.
I would love that. I know both of you are leaders in schools, and I would love, call me, beat me if you want me.
Rebecca Raymond. Okay, I see it.
You see what I did there?
I see it. I see it. A little Disney Channel in here. Okay. No, yeah, I definitely. In fact, yeah. So Lisette mentioned I'm going to be opening a school building, and it actually won't open until the fall of 2025. So I'll be planning over this next year. But some of the things that I'm going to be tasked with doing is that sense of building community ahead of time, right? Because we'll have students who will be coming from other school buildings, right? My fifth graders that'll come to me will have spent K through 4 going somewhere else, maybe multiple other buildings. And now how do you come to my building and find that sense of community? So I think that's definitely a place where we can partner together,
I would love
bring
to
this
help with
book
that.
in, be able to get that out into the hands of kids. You can be who you want to be. And man, when you said that, I just got to share, like that really hit home for me. I get a chance on the 4th Sunday of every month. I go and I do jail ministry at DeKalb County Jail. And I'm always talking with the brothers inside about the fact that like growing up, I felt like I had to be a G. I had to be like West Coast connection. I had to, you know, like I can still crip walk today. Don't get me wrong. You know what I'm saying? But I say all of that to say that I remember when I felt a call to preach, like feeling conflicted. Because I was like, oh, wait, this is the image that I've been fed of what I need to be. And so I had to say, no pink, please. Or what, you know, in my case, it was no to gangster rap. And, you know, whatever it is. So I think that theme really hits home. I do want to ask one more thing before we wrap up here. I know, you know, you've kind of referenced it a little bit already, but that idea of closing that reading gap.
Yeah.
Right. You know, we had an opportunity to talk with Principal Caffelli, and Principal Caffelli, he talks about the gap, right? Of that idea that sometimes it's an attitude, sometimes, right? And all these different gaps. What are some things, right? If somebody's listening right now, and they're getting ready to walk back into a classroom here for the end of the school year or going into summer school even, what are some things that you would recommend to them to work on closing that reading gap?
To be honest, I like to tell people this all the time. There is no magic pill for teaching reading. There is no magic pill for teaching reading. Reading comes with a lot of practice, a lot of push, and learning what your kids need where they are. People be like, oh, no small groups. Yes, small groups, baby, because how are you teaching 30 kids and they're all over the place and you're only teaching them one curriculum? First of all, he can't read. So let's figure that out first. But with this reading gap, they are saying it's getting smaller, but it doesn't feel like it's getting smaller. Brown and Black students are still at the bottom of the totem pole, and the resources are still scarce. And I feel like you know, you said the person who's going back in, first of all, you on the long call, you got this, I believe in you, you almost at the end, to that person. But also continue to push your kids to read daily. That's it. That's the only thing that you can do at this point of the school year. Continue to push your kids to read daily, because that practice, that interaction with literature, those little nuances, that's what they need. They need to develop a love for reading, even if it's not like a big passion. Oh, I love reading. At least they'll be able to say, I can decode words, you know?
Yeah, you know, my husband, he is such an avid reader now as an adult, but he said as a kid, he despised it. He did not like reading at all. He said he wasn't very good at it. And so I think, you know, it made me pause and wonder about some of the kids that have said those same things to me about, like, I'm not a good reader, or I really don't enjoy reading. But yeah, you continue to push them because you never know down the
Or find
road.
out what they like. Like
Like,
I have my best friend, she also hated reading when we were young, and I was like reading everything. And one thing that the educator who introduced me at my book launch, one thing that she did for my best friend was she would allow her to read things that she was interested in. She loved cooking, so she read cooking books.
wow.
You know, she loved history and learning about different businesses. So this teacher brought books about businesses, and that's what she was interested in. And that's another reason why No Pink Please exists as well, because we need more things that our kids are interested in, that our kids know about too. You know, a lot of times we see a lot of literature about things that does not exist in the hood. Let's just be real. Like, I'm not going horseback riding, but I might go down the street to the park. You know, I'm
Yes.
not going to a big car race on Sunday with grandpa, but I may go fishing with grandpa. Like, it's just, you know, understanding your audience and pushing them in the direction that they need to be pushed.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about us introducing The Hate You Give to the curriculum in DeKalb, and it was funny because
It was probably like, no.
yeah, there was some pushback. There was some pushback, but the kids were. I love to share this. Right, I love to share this piece though too, because there was a student in the class. The first year we read it, there was a student in the class whose dad was deputy sheriff. And there was a student in the class who had lost a friend to gun violence. And to watch them bond in this conversation around, right, this book that was real and powerful. And yes, it had language in it, but it was the language that the kids were using, right? And really powerful stuff.
Another book for kids who either are reading on a like a lower level or younger kids is Ghost Boys. It talks about, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Let me go grab it.
Read that too.
Oh, sorry. I got books for days.
Any good author should.
This book called Ghost Boy is by Jewel Parker Rhodes.
Oh,
it's
okay.
really, really, really good. And it's, you know, hit some of those same things as The Hate You Give, but on a lower level. So just for
Ghost Boys. Can we see it? Do you have a copy of your book?
heck yeah. All right. There is No Pink Please, guys. I cannot believe I wrote a book.
Yes, it's beautiful. I mean, and I know we say don't judge a book by its cover, but I would want to pick up that book immediately.
I was trying to make it as bright as possible.
You succeeded.
Another thing that I tried to make sure with my book was it wasn't too long, because I've noticed like a lot of new children literature authors, they have good stuff and good content, but sometimes it's so long, like the parents are like, look, this is not a bedtime story. You know. And so I took a lot of like polls and got feedback from a lot of different parents, like, what would you think if it had this many pages? What do you think about illustrations with big words? Or, you know, just asked a lot of questions just to get my, you know, ideas out there to see if like they will be received well. So
awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I look forward to partnerships.
Yes, I was going to say, we got to talk about this even after this interview. But final question, you've talked about, the struggle of our communities and how sometimes they can be over commercialized. Can you explain a little bit what you mean by that?
So for me, I feel like there's so many stories and so many things happening in our communities other than the struggles that we are facing every day. Yes, those struggles are important and they need to be highlighted on a daily basis, but there are also good things happening. There are also people putting together rallies and people putting together like just community-based parties and things like that are not being glorified, that are not being spoke of, or even just going, like I was talking about, different types of literature where kids doing things with people in their families. Let's talk more about those things instead of always highlighting, oh, we struggled, or oh, we're oppressed. And yeah, we know those things. We've been living that our entire lives. But there are other good things that are happening. There are kids that walk down my street every day who pick up the trash. I live in the hood, by the way. All we hear about is, oh, the rallies and this, and they did this and they did that. And there's so many good things that are happening, and our literature can reflect that. We do have families. We do have family members who do nice things for us that are not predators or, bad people. And I feel like those stories need to be told more versus everything about our pain. We know our pain. We feel it every day.
Yes. Yeah. So that's so funny. I don't think I even thought about that when I was writing this first book. But it's called What I Always Wanted to Be. And ultimately it's about the fact that I wanted to be a dad. Right. Oh. And so I talk about all these things I wanted to be when I was a kid, and how I still get to help people, and I still get to, be a hero, and I still get to do this and that. Right. And ultimately though, it's about being a dad. And somebody pulled me aside and was like, yo, I want you to know this is really powerful, because it is that image, right, of like Black fatherhood.
Black father. They're there.
Right. We're here. Hey, we're present, And so, yeah, I love that idea of literature that, right. And it's still impacted by, right. So one of the lines I use in there, I quote Dr. King in there, and I use a line in there about wanting to be the first Black president, right. Because that still needs to be mentioned, right. That's a reality. I always joke. Sure. Yes. I always joke when I'm reading it that Obama ruined it for me, but he took away my dream, because I'm just now barely old enough to be president. But anyways, much power to him. Yeah, exactly. Now I feel like I need to wait till I turn 70 to run for president, apparently. Anyway, but yeah, I love that. So, Djuana, we have a tradition here on Black, Brown, and Bilingue, and that is we always close with, like, if there was one thing you want our listeners to walk away with, they've made it to this part in the podcast, right? This part in the video, they've watched to the end. What is one thing that you want them to walk away with from our conversation today?
The one thing that I want you guys to walk away from this conversation today is make sure you're reading. Read to your kids, read to your babies, read when they're in your womb, because we need to close this gap, y'all. And the only way we can is if we start early with our babies.
Perfect. And it's so true. When you come in and just from the start, you set that literacy routine, you make it happen.
Yeah.
Nothing can replace practice, right?
Nothing.
All right. So for Black, Brown, and Bilingue, I'm Lisa Jacobson.
And I'm Maurice McDavid.
Muchas gracias for tuning in.
Adios.